Hi YouTube, this is Raven. I'm a survivor of a 16-year marriage to a covert narcissist, and now I'm in a high conflict divorce from a covert narcissist. And unfortunately, if you've had children with your narcissist or someone with a personality disorder, you're going to hear this term co-parenting. And I hate the term co-parenting because it assumes that, there are two parents and you're working on the same team. But the thing is, with the narc, you're on opposite teams. Because a lot of times, the narc is like, especially with my narc, I call him douchebag. He's like an overgrown child. He's not really a parent. And so the idea of co-parenting does not even exist. And, even before our divorce, I used to call him Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Because he was that kind of parent. He could be very, very nice one minute, and then the next, it's like he flipped a switch. And he's screaming and yelling at the kids, and he's abusing the kids verbally and mentally and emotionally. And, every time he did something nice for the kids, or for me, in that matter, he would post it on Facebook because he wanted, the entire world to know, what a great dad and what a great father he was. And, that's the way covert narcs are, is that they have this image that they present to the outside world, but then at home, it's totally different. And Facebook is like a playground for narcissists because you can present whatever image you want to the world. You want the world to think you're funny or you're sexy or witty, and you control that environment. And that's what he did. So a lot of people still don't believe that. They just couldn't believe that he had anger issues, or that he would treat his family that way, his children that way. But that's the way covert narcs are. Well, a lot of the things that he would do, a lot of times, I felt like I was the referee. I was the one standing in between him and the kids, trying to make sure that the kids had a normal childhood and didn't feel abused. Like some of the things he would do, he had been fat as a child. And so he didn't want his kids to grow up fat, so, he monitored everything the children ate. I mean, they could not get a glass of water without asking his permission. He would, he was making tater tots, he would count out each tater tot he's putting on their plates. They couldn't have regular French fries. They had to have sweet potato fries. They couldn't have regular hot dogs because those had too many calories in them, so they had to have turkey dogs instead. And I think that, my kids were so hungry. I look back on pictures of my daughter when she was 5 years old, and she looks emaciated. And it scares me to think that now, but I was emaciated as well because he had me convinced that I was fat. And, I'd lost 20 pounds. And, I was 108 pounds, but when I looked in the mirror, I looked fat to me. And it was because, I was married to someone who put such an emphasis on your looks. And when we moved out here to this farmhouse, when the separation started and the kids and I had to move, I would find candy wrappers, I would find food wrappers that my daughter had hidden because she was binge eating. And I think it's because she had been so hungry all her life. And, now she's binge eating to try and catch up, but she's afraid she's going to get in trouble. So she's, stuffing the wrappers down under her bed and under the couch and in the couch cushions, just trying to hide it. And, he'd had other things. He had these impossible rules and standards they had to follow. And like one of them was, that you had to use a towel 3 times. Your bath towel had to be used 3 times before you put it in the hamper. And there was one night my daughter took a shower and she dried herself and she took the towel and she put it in the hamper. And he came after her just like this. I saw what you did. I saw what you did. You go right now and get that towel out of there. And, she was shaking like, what did I do? It's like, you know what you did. And, I would tell him, it's like, yeah, hey, this is no big deal. She put her, I'm glad she put her dirty clothes in the hamper. No, we have too much laundry in this house. And he would do other things, like, when we had, the kids were getting pictures made at Christmas, and we were going to give these as Christmas presents. And my son has ADHD, so he just cannot hold it together. He is always hyper, and he's always happy. And, he's bouncing around, and he can't stay still. And the narc got so mad, he gets in there, he grabs him like this, and says, you will sit down, and you'll be still, and you'll smile for these pictures. It's just like that, and that's how he yelled. I used to call it his demon voice, because it would just get very low and guttural. It's like, I'm trying to scare the living daylights out of you. Just like that. And my son, started crying. I mean, he's bawling at this point. I'm like, great. We're paying $200 for pictures of our kid, and he's crying. And I got mad at that point because I had reached a point in our marriage where I did not care if he and I had a good, loving relationship, but I did care how he treated the children. And I told him, it's like, I don't care where you go, just go somewhere other than here, because you're not helping. So he went somewhere else in the mall, and he pouted. And then there was another time we were Christmas shopping, in Target, and, my son just can't stay still. He's excited. And, the narc grabs him and was like, you get back in that buggy right now and you'll be quiet. Sit down. And he's yelling at my daughter the same way. And, there again, I'm like, you need to leave. You're not making the situation any better, And so he goes off and he pouts, like a little kid. And my daughter said something to me. She was 7 years old at the time. She said, thank you for making him leave. And she said it just like that, very serious. And that should have been a red flag. It should have been a moment when I said enough was enough and left. But, I didn't, because I was trying to keep our family together. And, he was so controlling that he couldn't let our daughter just do activities without his input. And my daughter joined Girl Scouts. And, he couldn't stand that, two other women were Girl Scout leaders. He demanded that he be the head of the troop. He wanted to be the head Girl Scout leader. They could be assistant leaders. And I think these women got tired of being told what to do by this man who's trying to take over the troop. So they went to the council, and the council kicked him out. And he was just so upset. It's like, oh, the Girl Scouts are supposed to be so inclusive, and yet, they can't stand it if a man's in charge. And I remember thinking, it's like, yeah, they are inclusive. The Girl Scouts are so inclusive that they'll let, a boy who identifies as a girl can still be a Girl Scout. I mean, he may have a 12-inch long tallywhacker, but, if he puts on the sash, he can be a Girl Scout. But yet, they didn't want my narc. That speaks volumes. Well, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, my narc, disappeared when we started going through the separation because he had put a gun in his mouth, said he was going to kill himself. He ended up in the mental hospital for a while. When he got out of the mental hospital, he wanted a divorce. But he had spun this story to where I was the bitch who had driven him to suicide, because he's always the victim or the hero in his story. And so now he had to keep up the story, and so he had to prove, that I was, a bitch. So whenever he was around other people who saw him with the kids, he turned into what I call Disneyland dad. And, there was a time where his dad was there helping him move his stuff out of our house, and the ice cream truck came down the street, and my son wanted ice cream. And he said, oh, here you go, son. Here, take this money and go get you some ice cream. And my daughter's like, what the hell's wrong with Dad? I mean, she even used those words. And because she even knew that there was something off, for him to act that way. And, my son he gave him $20. And my son gives the $20 to the ice cream man, and, the ice cream man gives him back the change. But, of course, he was 6 years old. I mean, he didn't know what to do with change. And so he lost the rest of the change, and he was crying. It's like, I lost the allowance Dad gave me. And I was like, you don't give a 6-year-old $20, but he started giving the kids allowance. He started taking the kids every weekend to an amusement park or the beach, just anywhere, and letting them stay up to all hours of the night. They didn't have to brush their teeth. They didn't have to brush their hair. They eat as much junk food as they want, and then come back. He was trying to portray me as like, look, I'm the fun dad now, and Mommy is just, she's not fun, and he was doing this because he wanted to get 50-50 custody, and I wouldn't let him have it because, he had been suicidal. I didn't realize that it was a manipulation tactic. But, Disneyland Dad didn't stick around very long because, number one, he couldn't keep it up forever because, he was really Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And second, child custody had been decided, and he did not get primary custody. He got, joint custody, but I get the kids the majority of the time. So there was no reason for him to really be Disneyland Dad anymore. There was nobody to impress. And a couple months after this, I texted him on a weekend that he had the kids. I said, how are the kids doing? He said, they're getting used to take no shit, Dad. I was like, what does that mean? I texted him back. I'm tired of these children taking advantage of me and manipulating me and lying to me and abusing me. It's like, no more. It's like, you know, I'm laying down the law. So I knew at that point that Disneyland Dad was gone. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was back. You know, there was another instance on a Boy Scout trip where someone in my son's class had seen him grab my son and scream and yell at him, you know, to the point where they thought they needed to call the Department of Social Services. And, you know, what I can say is that, you know, if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you know, if you can get out, for the sake of your children, get out. My children deserved better. They did not deserve to be in that situation for so long, but I did it because, you know, I thought I was trying to keep our family together. But, you know, in reality, they would have been better off because, you know, when you're in a situation with a narcissist and you're trying to co-parent, you're going to have to be mom and dad. You're going to have to do, you're really going to do damage control. Because the time that they're with the narc, you know, you have no control over what's going to happen. But when they are with you, you can do whatever you can to do damage control, to try and make their lives a little bit better, even though they have to be with the narc half the time. You know, if you have relatives, extended family, you know, that aren't narcissists, don't have personality disorders, you know, let your kids spend time with them so they can see what a normal family looks like. So they can see what normal is. Because when they're with the narc, that's not normal. And the narc is trying to make them think that that's normal. And that's abuse. All right. That's all for now. Be vigilant. Be safe. Take care.